Here's something that might make you pause a bit. In Kathmandu, Nepal, a tech scene that's really starting to boom, AI isn't just some abstract idea anymore.
Hmm.
It's like actively changing how software actually gets written. So what does that really mean for the developers on the ground?
That's precisely the question we're digging into in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at a really interesting piece of research.
Okay.
It's called Human-AI Collaboration in Software Development: Impact on Developer Roles and Skill Sets in Kathmandu. It's by Dronachandra Podel and Dr. Pradeep Karn from Lord Buddha Education Foundation, published back in September 2024.
Right, last year.
Yeah, and it gives this fantastic sort of ground-level view of what's happening, this global shift, but in a specific place.
Exactly. And, some listeners might think, Kathmandu, why focus there? But I think this study gives such a crucial perspective.
I agree.
These huge changes driven by AI, they aren't just happening in Silicon Valley or London. Seeing how it plays out in a really dynamic, developing environment like Kathmandu, that gives us a much richer picture of the future for tech everywhere.
Definitely.
So whether you're actually coding every day or maybe leading a tech team or even just curious about how work is changing, we're going to try and break down this research for you, get you the key insights without all the dense academic jargon.
Yeah, our goal, our sort of mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. Pull out the most important findings and what they mean, really, for you, the listener.
Mhm.
We want to shed some light on how that relationship between developers and AI is evolving, specifically through what this Kathmandu study found.
Okay, let's get into it then. Kathmandu's clearly embracing AI in software development. What were the researchers actually seeing that made them think, okay, we need to study this?
Well, what's really fascinating is the core problem they identified. It's that the traditional job of a software developer, it's fundamentally changing because AI is starting to automate more and more of the routine coding tasks. The stuff that used to take up a lot of time. So it's not just about banging out lines of code anymore.
Right. And the study points out that developers increasingly need skills that go beyond that. Things like data analysis, maybe even building ML models themselves, and definitely getting good at using these new AI tools effectively.
Exactly. And there seems to be a real concern, highlighted in the paper, about a potential skills gap in Kathmandu. Are developers keeping up? And even the possibility that some existing roles might, well, become less relevant.
So that raises the question, what specifically were the researchers trying to figure out? What were their main objectives?
They had several key questions. They wanted to understand first how AI is actually being integrated into the IT companies there.
Okay.
Then what are the current job roles, what skills are needed now, and also how do developers themselves feel about working with AI? The pros and cons from their perspective.
And they were also looking into how AI could make developers more efficient, right? And how to make that human AI team up work best.
Yes, precisely. And importantly, they also wanted to explore the potential downsides.
Yeah.
Like what happens if you just chase AI efficiency without thinking it through? And ultimately, how does this whole collaboration actually affect the jobs and skills needed there in Kathmandu?
It sounds like the findings could be really useful for quite a few different groups in Nepal.
Oh, definitely. If you think about it, for universities and training centers, it's about updating their courses, making sure they're teaching relevant skills.
Makes sense.
For companies, it helps them understand what kind of skills they should be hiring for, or maybe upskilling their current teams in.
Right.
And even for policymakers, it flags potential shifts in the workforce they might need to consider.
Absolutely. And I think what makes this study particularly valuable is that focus on Kathmandu. It's a tech hub that's growing fast, so it gives this, localized insight into a global trend. It's not just theory, it's what's happening on the ground.
And before jumping into their own findings, the researchers did a good job reviewing what others have already found. The literature review they included had some pretty interesting points.
Like what?
Well, for instance, they cited research from Alain Doe and others back in 2023 suggesting that large language models, LLMs, could really shake up various jobs in the U.S., even, surprisingly, some higher-paying ones.
Huh. Interesting. So not just entry-level stuff.
Apparently not. And another study they mentioned, Felton et al., also from 2023, found a link between higher wages and how much exposure people had to AI in fields like finance and law.
Okay, so there's an economic angle there too.
Definitely. But then there were other researchers, like Seaman in 2022 and Sarkar in 2023, who argued we should be careful about how we frame this. They suggested thinking of AI more as a powerful tool rather than a true collaborator in the human sense.
That's a useful distinction. It's about augmentation maybe, not replacement.
Kind of, yeah. It's about enhancing human capability. The literature also stressed how important good design is for these human AI systems. Subramoniam in 2023 talked about needing clear guidelines for making that teamwork effective.
Okay.
And, while AI can speed things up, a 2023 study by Nascimento served as a reminder that those uniquely human skills, critical thinking, creativity, complex problem solving, they're still absolutely essential.
That's reassuring, I suppose. But the review also mentioned some direct benefits for developers, didn't it?
It did. Research from Chen in 2024 and Tiani in 2023 suggested AI pair programming can actually improve code quality and make developers happier.
Better code and happier devs. Sounds good.
And Rasmus in 2024 found tools like ChatGPT can boost efficiency and motivation, probably by handling some of the more tedious coding bits.
Okay, so lots of potential upsides. But were there downsides mentioned too?
Oh, yes. Existing research, including work by Carmen in 2024, consistently points to ongoing challenges. Things like building trust in the AI's output, making sure communication between the human and the AI is clear, and, critically, the ongoing need for human oversight. You can't just set it and forget it.
Right, that human judgment piece seems key. So knowing all that background, how did the Kathmandu researchers actually conduct their own study? What was their approach?
They went with a quantitative method. That basically means they focused on collecting numerical data, things they could count and analyze statistically.
Okay, numbers and stats.
Exactly. They used structured surveys, distributing them to people working in various IT companies and startups right there in Kathmandu. They managed to get a pretty decent sample size, too, 394 respondents in total.
394, that's quite a few. Across different types of developers.
Yeah, they covered various levels, from junior developers up to more senior roles, to get a broad picture.
Okay, so they gathered all this data. What did the analysis actually show? What were the key findings?
Right, this is where we get to the core results, especially from their hypothesis testing. They had specific ideas they wanted to test.
Let's hear them.
Okay, first big one. They hypothesized that a developer's experience with AI would significantly impact their role. And guess what? That was accepted. The stats backed it up.
Accepted.
Yeah.
So more AI experience means your job changes.
Pretty much. The analysis showed a statistically significant result. The p-value was 0.03. Just briefly, a low p-value like that, generally under 0.05, gives researchers confidence that the finding isn't just due to random chance.
Okay, got it. So low p-value, strong finding. What does that actually suggest for developers in practice?
It suggests that the more time you spend actively using and working with AI tools, the more likely it is that your role within the team might shift. Maybe you're doing less routine coding and more, say, overseeing AI systems, integrating them, or focusing on higher-level strategic tasks that leverage AI.
So that time spent learning AI tools really does translate into potentially different work.
It seems so, based on this study. Your experience isn't just a line on a CV. It could be actively reshaping what you do day to day. Think less pure coding, maybe more AI wrangling or orchestration.
Interesting. Okay, what about the overall adoption of AI by a company? Did simply working at a company using AI automatically mean big skill changes for everyone?
Well, that's where one of their other hypotheses didn't quite pan out as expected. They thought AI adoption would strongly correlate with significant changes in the required skill sets. But that hypothesis was actually rejected.
Rejected. Why?
The p-value was 0.07. That's borderline maybe, but technically not low enough by conventional standards to be considered statistically significant.
So even if a company brings in AI tools, it doesn't necessarily mean, boom, everyone suddenly needs drastically different skills according to this data. Any thoughts on why that might be?
Yeah, there could be a few reasons. Maybe the AI tools being used are more about enhancing current skills, making developers faster or more efficient at what they already do, rather than requiring totally new skills right away.
Okay, like a better hammer, not a completely different toolkit.
Sort of. Or it could just be timing. Maybe the study caught things at a point where AI adoption is happening, but the widespread deep upskilling across the entire workforce hasn't fully kicked in yet in Kathmandu.
That makes sense. It takes time for those things to filter through.
Yeah.
What about developer attitudes? Did they look at how willing people were to work with AI?
They did. And this one yielded a very clear result. They tested whether a developer's openness to AI collaboration influenced their productivity.
Yeah.
Accepted. Strongly supported. The p-value was 0.02.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty direct link. If you're open to working with AI, you tend to get more done.
That's exactly what the data suggests. It really highlights how important mindset is. Being receptive, willing to integrate these tools, It seems to pay off in terms of productivity.
Okay, that's a clear takeaway. Now, did they look at how people use AI, like how often, or what specific tasks they use it for? Did that predict changes in their roles?
They did look at that. They hypothesized that AI use behavior, the frequency and manner of use, would significantly influence developer roles. But interestingly, this one was rejected.
Rejected again. So it doesn't matter how much you use AI. It doesn't necessarily change your job title or main responsibilities.
According to their findings, not significantly. The p-value here was 0.15, quite a bit higher than the threshold.
Hmm. Any interpretation for that?
It might suggest that, at least in the companies surveyed, AI is still playing more of a supplementary or supporting role. It helps with tasks, but maybe it hasn't yet fundamentally redefined the core responsibilities tied to specific job titles like back-end developer or front-end developer.
So experience with AI and openness to it seem more predictive of change than just the frequency of use or general company adoption based on these results.
That seems to be the picture painted by this particular study in Kathmandu.
Did the research uncover anything else interesting about the developers themselves, like demographics?
Yeah, they provided some context there. Education-wise, it was a pretty diverse group, but a solid majority, about 61%, had at least a bachelor's degree, many with master's degrees too.
Okay, so generally well educated.
Yes. In terms of age and experience, there was moderate variation in age, but quite a broad spectrum when it came to years of professional experience.
Right. And did they find any patterns in which roles were using AI the most in Kathmandu?
They did. It seems roles like first-stack developers, people in leadership positions, CXOs, and data scientists reported using AI tools daily more often.
Any idea why those roles specifically?
Well, full-stack developers often juggle a wider range of tasks. CXOs might use it for strategic analysis, and data scientists, well, AML is core to their work, so it kind of makes sense.
What about others like back end or front end?
Their usage patterns were apparently more varied. Some use it daily or weekly, others less so. And it's worth noting there was still a segment, around 13%, who reported rarely using AI tools at all when the survey was done.
So not universal adoption yet, even among developers. Okay, if we try to wrap this all up, what's the main headline conclusion from this Kathmandu study?
I'd say the main conclusion is that AI is definitely making inroads in Kathmandu's software scene. It is influencing developer roles and the skills needed, but the impact isn't uniform.
Right.
It seems to depend more on individual factors, specifically how much hands-on experience a developer has with AI and how open they are to collaborating with it. The direct link between just general AI adoption by the company or frequency of use and changes in roles or skill sets wasn't as strong as perhaps expected, at least in this snapshot.
Okay, that's a really useful summary. So for everyone listening, what's the single most important insight or takeaway you want them to remember from this deep dive?
I think the key things are, first, developer roles are evolving because of AI. It's not hype, it's happening. Second, your personal experience with AI seems to be a significant factor in shaping your future role. And third, being open to working with AI appears to be directly linked to your productivity. This study gives us a concrete example from Kathmandu showing these dynamics at play.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe here's a final thought for everyone to chew on. How might these patterns playing out in Kathmandu apply elsewhere? Maybe in your city, your company, or even your own career? Given what the study found about experience and openness being key, what are the practical steps, that developers or organizations could take now to adapt and really succeed? Maybe the future isn't just about coding faster, but about rethinking how we design systems and solve big problems with AI as a genuine partner.
That's a great question to ponder. This research gives us a valuable snapshot, a starting point. But clearly, the story of AI and software development is still being written. There's so much more to learn and discuss as this technology continues to evolve.